Yes, really. They could be clouding your memory, raising your blood pressure, and even affecting your most personal private health in ways no one dares to talk about. And the worst part, most seniors eat these exact nuts every single day thinking they're doing something good. But here's the truth. There are 4 powerful nuts that can actually heal, restoring your energy, your clarity, and even your sleep. And there are 4 others that quietly steal those things from you little by little, year after year. Today, we're going to reveal them all so you can protect your body and start feeling stronger, sharper, and more alive. But first, if you care about your health after 60, take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. This channel is your voice, and I want to hear from you. If you're watching, type 1 in the comments if this is helpful to you. If not, type 0. You have no idea how much your voice matters. You're not just a viewer here, you're part of something bigger. Now, let's begin. Let's start with the very first nut you should be eating every single day, the Brazil nut. Now, this isn't just any nut. It's a quiet powerhouse, especially for older adults. Packed with one of the most important minerals your body needs after 60, the Brazil nut is a game changer for your thyroid, your energy, and yes, even your testosterone. Let me share a story. A few years ago, I met a retired firefighter in his late 60s. Let's call him Jack. Jack came into my office feeling drained. His energy was gone. His thinking was foggy. He felt disconnected physically and mentally, and nothing seemed to help. He had tried all the usual things: pills, powders, special diets. But nothing brought back the spark he used to have. We ran a full lab panel, and one thing stood out. Jack was severely low in selenium. Now, selenium isn't a mineral people think about every day, but it's critical especially for men over 60. It affects how we think, how we feel, how we move, and even how we sleep. So I gave Jack one simple piece of advice. No prescription, no expensive supplement, just this: eat 1 Brazil nut per day. That's it. 3 weeks later, Jack returned to my office. His skin had more color. His eyes were clearer. He leaned in with a grin and said, "Doc, I don't know what's in that nut, but I feel alive again." That's the magic of Brazil nuts. They're the richest natural source of selenium on the planet. Just one nut gives you over 130% of your daily selenium needs. But more importantly, the selenium in Brazil nuts is bound to organic compounds, which means your body can absorb it more easily and use it more effectively. And here's why this matters. Selenium is essential for producing thyroid hormones, the very hormones that regulate your metabolism, your energy levels, your mood, and even your memory. As we get older, thyroid function tends to slow down. That leads to fatigue, cold hands, unexplained weight gain, and a frustrating loss of mental clarity. But selenium can help turn that around by supporting your thyroid from the inside out. It doesn't stop there. Selenium also plays a key role in producing testosterone. Now, most people think testosterone is only about libido, but in truth, it affects your strength, your motivation, your sleep quality, and your ability to think clearly. Low testosterone can leave you feeling tired, unmotivated, even depressed. Brazil nuts help your body restore that balance naturally and safely. But one of the most overlooked benefits of Brazil nuts is how they protect your nervous system. The healthy fats in these nuts support the integrity of your myelin sheath. That's the insulation around your nerves that keeps signals moving quickly and clearly between your brain and body. When your myelin breaks down, everything slows: your reflexes, your movement, your thinking. And you begin to feel disconnected from the body you once trusted. Protecting your nerves is one of the most important things you can do as you age, and Brazil nuts help you do that every day. Now here's a very important warning. More is not better. Too much selenium can be toxic over time. That's why I recommend no more than 1 to 2 Brazil nuts per day. That's all you need. Store them in the refrigerator, ideally still in their shell, and chew them well. Think of it as a daily ritual, a small act of care with a massive return. No pills, no prescriptions, just 1 nut once a day, and the wisdom to stay consistent. If a single Brazil nut can awaken your thyroid, restore your testosterone, and protect your nerves, just imagine what happens when you add the next powerful nut to your routine. Let's move on to the second nut you should be eating every day: almonds. These aren't just a convenient snack. They're one of the most overlooked allies in protecting 2 of the most vulnerable parts of your aging body, your bones and your brain. There's something warm and familiar about almonds. Maybe it's the crunch. Maybe it's the subtle sweetness that lingers after each bite. For me, almonds bring back the image of my father every morning sitting by the window with a cup of warm tea and a small bowl of raw almonds. He never missed a day. He used to say, "These little things are keeping me sharp, son." Back then, I didn't fully understand what he meant. But after decades of research in medicine and aging, I know now he was absolutely right. Let's start with your bones. After the age of 60, especially past 65, your bone density begins to drop. That makes falls more dangerous. Fractures take longer to heal. And something as small as a misstep can turn into months of painful recovery. That's where almonds step in. They're rich in calcium, nearly 100 milligrams in just a quarter cup. But more importantly, they contain magnesium. And here's what makes that special. Magnesium acts like a traffic controller. It helps move calcium into your bones where it belongs, instead of letting it build up in your arteries. That powerful combination of calcium and magnesium in a single food is rare, but almonds deliver both. Now let's talk about your brain. Memory loss, brain fog. These are among the most feared health issues for seniors, and for good reason. Alzheimer's, dementia. They don't just take away memories, they take away independence. But almonds help defend your brain on multiple levels. When eaten with the skin on, they're packed with antioxidants. That thin brown skin is full of flavonoids, natural compounds that work hand in hand with vitamin E to reduce oxidative stress. And that's important because oxidative stress damages brain cells and accelerates cognitive decline. In fact, research from Tufts University shows that almonds, when eaten regularly, may slow down memory loss and preserve mental sharpness. It's not magic, it's nutrition. But it feels like a miracle when you're the one struggling to remember a name, follow a conversation, or stay engaged with your world. And there's more. Almonds are also loaded with fiber, about 3.5 grams per serving. And that matters because constipation is something almost no one talks about, but nearly half of older adults deal with it daily. And it affects everything: your energy, your mood, your sleep. Regular digestion plays a bigger role in your well-being than most people realize, and almonds support that in a gentle, natural way. So how much should you eat? I usually recommend 15 to 20 almonds a day, raw or dry roasted, unsalted, and always chewed thoroughly, especially for those with dental concerns or swallowing difficulties. It's not just about getting them down, it's about turning it into a mindful habit. Take your time, savor the moment. Because when you eat almonds, you're not just snacking, you're investing in your future strength, clarity, and dignity. Almonds are your silent protectors. And once they become part of your daily routine, your body begins to notice. Stronger steps, sharper thoughts, more confident days. But what if I told you? There's a nut that actually looks like your brain, and may be the most powerful natural food we have for protecting your memory, improving circulation, and even helping you sleep better at night. Now let's talk about the third nut you should be eating every day: walnuts. These little brain-shaped powerhouses are more than just a clever look-alike. They are quite literally the brain's best friend. I'll never forget one of my patients, Harold, a retired music teacher in his 70s. He had recently lost his wife, and along with the grief came something else. A slow but troubling slide in his memory. He'd forget names. He'd misplace keys. Sometimes he'd even get confused driving back home from places he'd visited for years. During one visit, Harold opened a kitchen cabinet and pulled out a small glass jar filled with walnuts. He looked at me and said, "I read somewhere they're good for the brain, and they kind of look like one too." That stuck with me, because Harold was right in more ways than he knew. Walnuts are rich in alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA, a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid that helps support the structure and flexibility of brain cell membranes. As we age, those membranes lose their fluidity, and communication between neurons slows down. That's when memory begins to blur. Thoughts become harder to hold on to. But ALA helps reinforce those neural connections, keeping them strong and responsive. And that's just the beginning. Walnuts are loaded with polyphenols, powerful antioxidants that can cross the blood-brain barrier. They help reduce inflammation inside neural tissue inflammation that quietly sabotages memory focus and cognitive function. This kind of inflammation is one of the root causes of Alzheimer's and dementia, and walnuts target it at the source. One study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that seniors who consumed just 1.5 ounces of walnuts per day for 8 weeks showed real improvements in processing speed and mental flexibility. This isn't some abstract research finding. This is the difference between remembering your granddaughter's birthday or struggling to recall why you walked into a room. It's the difference between following a story during a conversation or feeling lost halfway through. And there's something else walnuts do that most people don't know. They contain natural melatonin, the hormone your body uses to regulate sleep. As we age, melatonin production declines, leading to restless nights and poor sleep quality. For many of my older patients, adding a small handful of walnuts in the evening has helped them fall asleep faster and wake up feeling more restored. So how many should you eat? I recommend around 7 to 9 walnut halves per day. Keep them in the fridge to protect their delicate oils from going rancid. And here's a tip: don't worry about the slightly bitter flavor in the skin. That's where many of the antioxidants live. Consider it a little kick of extra protection in every bite. As for Harold, he still eats his walnuts every day. And while the grief of losing his wife never fully leaves him, he told me recently that his mind feels sharper, his focus stronger, and his sense of self more intact. That's the quiet gift of walnuts. They don't change your life overnight, but over time they support the one thing you can't afford to lose: your mind. And if walnuts are the brain's favorite food, then the next nut is the unsung hero of blood pressure vision and blood sugar. A nut most people overlook, but once you understand what it can do, you'll never see it the same way again. Let's talk about the fourth nut you should be eating daily: pistachios. You might think of them as just a tasty snack, something light to munch on in the afternoon. But don't let their small size fool you. These little green gems are powerful defenders, especially when it comes to blood pressure, eye health, and blood sugar control. I still remember my grandfather. He had this old wooden bowl that sat on the kitchen counter. Every afternoon, like clockwork, he'd sit in his armchair with a handful of pistachios, cracking them open one by one with quiet patience. As a kid, I thought it was just a habit, something old people do to pass the time. But now, with everything we know about nutrition and aging, I realize just how wise he was. Pistachios are one of the most underrated superfoods for older adults. They're often overshadowed by trendier nuts, but they deliver a unique combination of nutrients that are essential after 60. First, let's talk about blood pressure. Pistachios are one of the most potassium-rich nuts available, with around 285 milligrams in a single ounce. That's more than many fruits and vegetables. And potassium is absolutely vital for keeping your blood pressure in check, especially as we age, and our arteries become stiffer and more sensitive to salt. For older adults trying to manage hypertension naturally, pistachios are a safe, effective ally. Next, your vision. Pistachios are rich in two powerful carotenoids, lutein and zeaxanthin. These compounds accumulate in the retina, where they help filter out harmful blue light and protect against age-related macular degeneration. And that's no small thing. Vision loss is one of the most feared conditions among seniors, and it doesn't happen all at once. It sneaks up gradually, making everyday tasks harder and reducing your independence. But pistachios provide steady, gentle support for keeping your eyesight sharp and your world bright. Now, let's talk about blood sugar, something millions of seniors deal with daily. Whether you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, what you eat matters. And pistachios shine here too. They contain about 3 grams of fiber per ounce and have a naturally low glycemic index. That means they help slow digestion, reduce sugar spikes after meals, and keep insulin levels more stable. All of which are crucial for managing energy focus and long-term health. But pistachios offer something else, something behavioral. When you eat them in the shell, the act of shelling slows you down. That gives your body more time to register fullness, making it easier to avoid overeating. And the empty shells create a visual reminder of how much you've eaten, which helps you stay mindful without having to count calories or measure portions. It turns snacking into a calm, intentional ritual, and that's something we can all benefit from. So how many should you eat? I usually recommend about 1 ounce a day, roughly 49 pistachios. Look for unsalted or lightly salted varieties. And if you have arthritis or limited hand strength, choose the ones that are naturally half-opened to make shelling easier. Pistachios support your heart. They protect your vision. They help regulate your blood sugar. And they offer a rare combination of flavor, nutrition, and function all in one bite-sized package. But here's the truth. While these 4 nuts can help protect and even restore your health after 60, there are other nuts that can do the exact opposite. They look innocent, even healthy, but they quietly cause inflammation, raise blood pressure, mess with your medications, and cloud your mind. You deserve to know what they are. Because avoiding the wrong foods is just as important as eating the right ones. Now that you know the 4 nuts that can help you thrive after 60, it's time we talk about the ones that could quietly be doing the opposite. Because the truth is, not all nuts are created equal. Let's start with the first, and perhaps the most misunderstood, peanuts. Most people assume peanuts are harmless. They're affordable, they're everywhere, and they've been a staple in American pantries for decades. But here's what most don't know. Peanuts aren't actually nuts. They're legumes. And that small botanical detail makes a big difference. Because peanuts grow underground, they're especially vulnerable to mold. And one particular mold, called aflatoxin, is nearly invisible. You can't see it. You can't taste it. But over time, it can build up in your body, quietly damaging your liver, weakening your immune system, and even increasing your risk of cancer. This is especially concerning for older adults. Why? because your body's natural detox systems slow down with age. That means you're more vulnerable to the long-term damage these invisible toxins can cause. But that's not the only issue. Even if you don't have a peanut allergy, peanuts can still trigger low-level inflammation throughout the body. This kind of chronic inflammation is sneaky. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't always show up on lab results. But it quietly contributes to joint pain, brain fog, heart strain, and faster aging. And let's not forget, most commercial peanuts are heavily salted. If you're one of the 60% of adults over 65 dealing with high blood pressure, that extra sodium only makes things worse. Even so-called natural peanut butters can contain added sugars and unhealthy oils. And while they may taste good, they're often loaded with omega-6 fatty acids. Too many omega-6 and not enough omega-3s throw off your body's inflammation balance. And that imbalance can impair circulation, memory, and even your emotional stability. Now here's something many people never hear about: peanuts can interfere with medications, especially if you're taking blood thinners. Peanuts contain compounds that affect how your body uses vitamin K, which can make it harder to manage your medications safely. I remember a patient of mine, George. He was 72, a proud Vietnam veteran, fit, active. But lately something had felt off. His joints were aching more than usual. His energy was low. His blood pressure was creeping up even though his habits hadn't changed. We went over everything. And one detail stood out: he was eating peanuts every single day. "Doctor," he said, "they're healthy, right?" That moment reminded me how much confusion still exists around foods we think are good for us. So let me be clear, I'm not saying you need to panic if you've had peanuts once or twice. But if you're over 60 and peanuts are part of your regular routine, it's time to seriously reconsider. Because the daily damage adds up, even if you don't feel it yet. There are safer, more supportive alternatives, ones that give you the same satisfying crunch, but without the silent risks. And we're just getting started. Because the next nut on the list might be even more surprising. It hides in smoothies, energy bars, and trail mixes. It's creamy sweet and marketed as heart healthy. But for seniors, it can quietly sabotage blood sugar digestion and even kidney health. Let's continue with the second nut you should avoid after 60, the cashew. Now I know this one might surprise you. Cashews are creamy. They're smooth. They taste amazing in trail mixes, granola bars, and even in healthy dairy-free products like cashew cheese and cashew milk. But behind that gentle flavor hides a series of risks that most older adults never hear about. I remember one patient in particular, Linda. She was 70 years old, warm, vibrant, and loved baking treats for her grandkids. But she came to me one day complaining about strange symptoms: constant fatigue, stomach discomfort, and unexplained spikes in her blood sugar. We sat down to review her habits, and cashews came up over and over. In her snacks, in her smoothies, in her so-called health bars. She looked at me and asked, "They're good for you, right?" Well, here's the truth. Cashews are tricky. They wear the costume of a healthy snack, and they show up in all kinds of clean or plant-based foods. But underneath, they pose three serious problems for older adults. First, blood sugar. Cashews are higher in carbohydrates than most other nuts. Just 1 ounce contains about 9 grams of carbs. And while that might not sound like much, it can have a noticeable glycemic effect, meaning it raises your blood sugar more than expected. For the millions of seniors dealing with diabetes or pre-diabetes, those little spikes can add up fast. And the consequences are often silent fatigue, brain fog, poor recovery after meals, until it shows up on your next A1C test. Second, kidney health. Cashews are loaded with compounds called oxalates. These are naturally occurring substances that bind to calcium in your gut and reduce your body's ability to absorb it. For seniors already struggling with calcium deficiency or weakened bones, this is a problem. But it gets worse. Oxalates can build up in your body over time and contribute to the formation of kidney stones. And anyone who's ever had one knows that pain is something you never want to go through again. It's not just painful, it's dangerous, especially in older adults. And here's the third problem choking. Cashews are soft and curved. Their texture makes them surprisingly easy to inhale by accident, especially if you have swallowing difficulties or dry mouth from medications, which are both common after 60. In fact, cashews are one of the top nuts involved in choking incidents among seniors. Now let's talk about processing. Cashews in their raw, natural state are actually toxic. They contain a compound called urushiol, the same irritant found in poison ivy. To make cashews safe to eat, they have to be heavily processed, steamed, cooked, and stripped. And during that process, many of the nutrients are lost. What you're left with is a nut that tastes good, but does very little to support your health. And in some cases can quietly cause harm. So, what's the better option? If you love creamy nuts or use them in recipes, try switching to almonds or walnuts. They're safer, more nutrient-dense, and far less likely to disrupt your blood sugar or kidney function. Linda made that swap, and within a few weeks she felt more energized, her digestion improved, and her blood sugar readings started moving in the right direction. All from a simple change removing one seemingly harmless nut from her daily habits. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Because even the healthiest looking foods can have hidden risks, and your body at this stage in life deserves better. Now, if cashews are the hidden trap, the next nut is something even more deceptive. It's rich, it's luxurious, and it's often marketed as heart-healthy. But in reality, it may be slowly adding pounds, raising your cholesterol, and even triggering gallbladder attacks without you realizing it. Now let's talk about the third nut you should avoid: macadamia nuts. They're rich, they're buttery, and they're often labeled as heart-healthy by fancy food brands and upscale markets. But for seniors, this indulgent little nut may be silently adding pounds, raising cholesterol, and even triggering painful gallbladder attacks. I once worked with a retired engineer named Carl. He was in his late 60s, sharp mind, great sense of humor, and disciplined in his daily habits. But slowly he started gaining weight. Nothing dramatic, just a few pounds creeping on each month. His blood pressure ticked upward. He felt sluggish after meals. So we looked at his diet. And there it was. Carl smiled and said, "Doc, I don't eat junk food, but I do treat myself to a few macadamia nuts at night. They're good for my heart, right?" That's when we had the talk. Macadamia nuts are incredibly dense in calories and fat. Just 1 ounce that's about 10 to 12 nuts contains nearly 200 calories and 22 grams of fat. And here's the key. For someone over 60 whose metabolism has naturally slowed down and who might not be moving as much as before, that adds up fast. This is what I call silent weight gain. No binges, no fast food. Just a slow, steady increase in weight that sneaks up and becomes hard to reverse. You're eating what feels like a small treat, but it's packing the caloric punch of a full mini meal. But that's not the only concern. Macadamia nuts are also among the highest in saturated fat of all nuts, around 3 grams per ounce. And while small amounts of saturated fat are okay, most older adults are already managing issues like high cholesterol or heart disease. Adding extra saturated fat can quietly undermine your efforts to stay healthy. Then there's the gallbladder. A lot of older adults have gallstones and many don't even know it. They might feel bloated after meals or have occasional discomfort in their upper right abdomen. But macadamia nuts, because of their high fat content, can actually trigger those stones to move. That leads to sudden, severe gallbladder attacks and sometimes emergency surgery. I've seen it more than once. The person thought they were eating something good for their body, but that richness pushed their digestive system too far. And let's not forget dental health. Macadamias are dense and tough. For seniors with crowns, bridges, or sensitive teeth, biting into one of these can spell disaster. I've had patients crack dental work on macadamia nuts, leading to expensive, painful repairs. It's not a risk worth taking. So what's the takeaway? Macadamia nuts might seem like a small indulgence, but they carry a heavy cost. They're not toxic like moldy peanuts. They don't spike blood sugar like cashews, but they're stealthy. They build up slow damage, extra pounds, higher cholesterol, gallbladder stress, all from something that feels innocent. If you enjoy the texture or flavor of macadamia nuts, consider switching to pistachios. They're lighter, more nutrient-dense, and offer actual cardiovascular support without the metabolic burden. Or try walnuts for brain health, or almonds for bone strength. Carl made that shift. He swapped out the macadamias for a mix of almonds and pistachios. In just a few weeks, his energy returned. His clothes fit better, and he no longer felt heavy after meals. That's the beauty of smart choices. They don't require perfection, just awareness and consistency. Now, if macadamias are the weight gainer, the next nut is something far more serious. It's tiny, oily, and often slips under the radar. But it can interfere with your medications, distort your sense of taste, and even lead to unintended weight loss. Now let's talk about the final nut on our list, pine nuts. They're small. They're often found in pesto-baked goods and health-conscious recipes. But despite their gourmet reputation, pine nuts come with a surprising set of risks, especially for seniors. Let me tell you about Ruth. She was 74, thoughtful, careful, and incredibly disciplined about her health. She walked every morning, tracked her medications, and enjoyed experimenting with new plant-based recipes in her kitchen. But one day she came into my office with a strange concern. "Doctor," she said, "everything tastes metallic, even water. It's been going on for weeks." At first, we checked the usual suspects medications, digestion, hydration. Nothing stood out. Then Ruth mentioned something she'd added to her diet recently, a homemade pesto made with pine nuts. That's when everything clicked. What Ruth was experiencing is something known as pine mouth. It's a condition where certain types of pine nuts trigger a bitter metallic taste that can last for days, even weeks. And while it's not dangerous in itself, it can lead to serious consequences. Because when food and water taste unpleasant, many older adults start to eat and drink less often without realizing it. This loss of appetite might seem like a small issue, but for someone already at risk of unintentional weight loss, dehydration, or frailty, it can tip the balance toward real health problems. Energy drops, muscle mass fades, and immunity weakens. All because of a nut most people don't even think twice about. But pine mouth isn't the only concern. Pine nuts also contain compounds that can interfere with how your body processes medications. This is particularly important if you take prescriptions for blood pressure, cholesterol, or mental health, which, let's face it, most seniors do. These nuts may affect how drugs are metabolized in the liver, potentially making them less effective or causing side effects you weren't expecting. And here's the real problem. Most doctors don't even know to ask about this interaction, so it goes unnoticed, even as your medications stop working the way they should. Then there's the issue of inflammation. Pine nuts are high in polyunsaturated fats. Now, polyunsaturated fats aren't bad in moderation, but they're extremely delicate. When stored improperly or kept too long, they oxidize easily. Once that happens, these fats can promote inflammation instead of reducing it. And for someone dealing with arthritis, joint pain, or inflammatory conditions, like metabolic syndrome, that extra inflammation adds fuel to the fire. All from a handful of nuts sprinkled into a salad or blended into a sauce. One more concern that often gets overlooked: aspiration risk. Pine nuts are small, slick, and easy to inhale by accident. For older adults, especially those taking medications that cause dry mouth, or those whose swallowing reflexes have slowed with age, this creates a real choking hazard. I've seen it happen. And it's scary. A small pine nut gets lodged in the throat or windpipe, turning a quiet meal into an emergency. So here's my advice: if you're over 60, it's best to avoid pine nuts entirely. There are so many other delicious, safer options that offer real benefits without the baggage. Instead of pine nuts, try sunflower seeds, or sprinkle chopped walnuts into your salad. Use pumpkin seeds for crunch. These swaps are simple, but they protect your health, your medication safety, and your peace of mind. Ruth made that switch. And not only did her taste return to normal, she started feeling more in control of her meals, her appetite, and her body again. Because that's the real goal here. Not just eating to survive, but eating to feel steady, energized, and strong. Now you've learned which nuts to eat and which ones to avoid. But how do you turn this knowledge into real change? Something that helps your energy, memory, sleep, and even intimacy. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this: you are not too old to feel strong again. You're not too far gone to restore your energy, your clarity, or your confidence. Sometimes all it takes is one small change, like choosing the right nut and removing the wrong one. That's how change begins. Not with giant leaps, but with quiet, consistent decisions. One bite at a time. One day at a time. So tomorrow when you walk into your kitchen, pause for a moment. Think about what you've learned. And ask yourself, is this food helping me live better, longer, stronger? If the answer is no, you already know what to do. Choose differently. And if this message spoke to you, if you feel more prepared, more empowered, or just more hopeful, then I'd love to hear from you. Type 1 in the comments if this helped you. Type 0 if it didn't, and tell me why. Because your voice matters, and your feedback helps shape every future video we create. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because you deserve real health advice, honest, science-based, and made just for you. Let's keep growing stronger together.